Hi guys, ladies and gentlemen, welcome this beautiful Saturday evening. It's indeed an honor to be hosting this prestigious episode of the Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series. My name is Epic. I'll give a couple of people. Welcome to Jesus Life Foundation. We'll be generous with our time and just anticipate for others to join in. Um, a big welcome to you, Shades of Life Foundation. I see you. Aha! I guess it's right. I see you, Doc. I see you, Doc. Welcome, madam. I see your requests. I'll take that immediately.
Okay.
Doc, good evening, madam.
Evening.
I'll say that I'll confess that I'm the most excited person at this point to get to host and organize this interaction with you, ma'am. It's my pleasure. I've read quite a number of stuff, and I'm honored to be doing this with you. Good evening, madam. Once again, how are you doing, madam? How's your day been?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you very much for
You're most
having
welcome.
me.
You're most welcome, madam. You're most welcome. We're going to get into an extensive conversation. The title of this conversation is "Living the Story," but allow me to do a brief introduction about the idea behind this entire conversation. So, this is the Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series, proudly brought to you by AK Foundation for Autism. The idea is to continue to amplify conversations with people who are well aware about autism and how it affects people within this space. We were careful to do our due diligence and do a little bit of research, and it is without a doubt that your name kept on popping up, and we reached out, hoping that you will honor our invitation. And we are deeply pleased to say that you are here live in the flesh. Again, it's an honor to have you here. We understand schedules can be crazy, but here you are in the flesh. So we want to genuinely say thank you again, madam. Thank you for
No
joining us.
problem. No
My name,
problem.
you're most welcome. My name is Epic. We understand that we do not have all the time in the world, so I'll try our possible best to extensively maximize as much time as we have. My name is Epic. I'll be hosting this conversation. The other guest, as you can see, so our listeners, the other guest, as you can see, is our very own Dr. Nwokolo. I'll give her a couple minutes to say, to introduce herself and just extensively highlight what she does and how long she's been in this space. Doc, the floor is yours.
The doctor bit is due to all the studying and everything. So I run a couple of entities, a couple of things that I do. There's a Shades of Life Care Limited. Well, I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, you are, Doc. Yes, you are.
So the Shades of Life Care Limited, we've been going on for a little over 10 years, where we do assessments, diagnosis, parent training, training professionals through the Shades of Life training arm, those that want to practice in the field, a bit of counseling, teacher training, and anything that has to do with behavior analysis, and then um, autism, intellectual disabilities. That's it. And then the foundation side of it just does exactly the same thing and partners with organizations, government agencies to also promote, the advocacy side of things, and shedding light to, like I always say, a disability that's not visible, and try to make it visible. So that's it in a nutshell. And then, yeah, that's me.
Well said, Doc. Well said. let's dive into a little bit more detail. You've had a very interesting career journey, Doc. From dreams of becoming an actress in Hollywood in California, precisely, to years in the oil and gas sector. How did you find yourself here doing this over the period of years you have actively done this? Where did it all start? What inspired that transition from the oil and gas sector to where you currently are now?
Well, it's all the things that you read about, just a sense of adventure, having a child, a family member who's on the spectrum, didn't know what it was at the time, got the help that she needed in country, and anywhere there was help, we're just trying to curate the resources that we required to help her thrive. And so in the course of doing all of that, I saw some gaps and I figured, why not? Like I always say, government is us, government of the people, by the people, for the people. So if you want something, you need to solution. So I figured, well, I'd work for quite a bit of time, and I figured, well, if why not now? When would it be? I didn't want to start doing this maybe in my 60s or something. So, yeah. So that's it.
Well said, absolutely. It's I would part of a little bit of research that we did highlighted how intuitive a person you are. You like to live in the moment, but we see that from what you have said, it's important that we address a little bit, just a little bit of it. You have a personal experience. You said you had a daughter on the spectrum. If we can we let's go into that a little bit. How was that experience like for you at the beginning, where you were still a little bit unfamiliar about the details of autism and the spectrum itself? How did it? At what age did you notice that your child was different? Obviously, not less, but different, and not like the regular kids.
Mm-hmm. Um, I've always been a data-driven person, so it wasn't a difficult thing to notice that there were some gaps, um, compared to the older ones and the younger ones, 'cause she's smack in the middle. So when it came to physical milestones, that was being met, all of that was being met. But when it came to other areas, social communication and all of that, um, there were gaps that needed, and this was before the age of 3. Right about when she was 2, it was kind of like full blown in my face that there were some differences. And of course, um, whilst I was just talking and gisting with colleagues and everybody who, of course, they too didn't know what was going on. So we're
Wow.
all gisting and wondering what was happening. But there were some traits that she basically, or behaviors she engaged in, that were also, you know, I mean, the sound, loud sounds, there were just sounds that
Sensitive
she
to
didn't tolerate, yeah, and that sort of thing. So those are all the things that got me wondering what was going on, you know. And so I had friends, close friends, colleagues who were like, okay, whilst we're praying, whilst you're doing the praying thing, why don't you go see a doctor? And of course, seeing the doctor, who clearly knew her pediatrician at the time, that we didn't have a clue as to what was going on. So getting that word or getting the label at the time was a bit like, what on earth is this? So just I wasn't it wasn't more about the label for me being stressed out about getting a label. I believe we need to know the name of things. We need to have names because Like I say to people these days that what you don't know or whatever it is, you've got to have a label. However you decide to label that would help you or show how you deal with the situation. So if you go give it a spiritual label and say this is a possessed child or demon, then obviously you're going to go off in the direction of praying and binding and casting. And if you give it a name that says the person is weird or whatever it is, you're most likely going to go into stigma or avoidance. If you give it a medical name, you're probably going to be looking for a cure. So you just find something to, and so for me it wasn't so much about having a label. The way I look at labels is that they just guide you to problem solve. So it was just more about the challenges that had to be dealt with, that were really the frustrating issues, and your my wanting to maybe like have a conversation or help this individual navigate aspects of life, and I'm really not able to. But one thing I did know was that whatever happened, she was going to succeed in life. However, we're going to get that to happen. It was going to happen. So yeah. Yeah, it wasn't so much about the label, like I said. It was more about the frustration of not being able to figure out what to do, because there were lots of issues. I mean, she was not speaking, she was non-vocal, she had all the things that were possible that anybody could have, whether it was um, food selection, not eating, whether it was, the whole it was a bundle of different things that had to be worked through. So it was just about working through each of those,
milestones.
yes, obstacles, and at every point in time figuring out how do we get her to communicate, how do we get her to eat, how do we get her, to broaden her food choices, how do we get her to socialize, interact with her peers, and that sort of thing. So yeah.
It's indeed a very interesting experience, filled with a roller coaster of emotions time and again. We'll get into more details about that, but let's talk about you a little bit more extensively. From your years in the oil and gas industry and deciding one day to venture in this, were there steps? What were the significant steps? You are currently a board certified behavioral analyst, one of the very few, if not the only one in Nigeria. You are a qualified behavioral analyst. So many plaques can be attributed to your personality, but this journey did not just start at the snap of a finger. It was a process. Talk us through the processes of being this experienced person, certifications you had to go through, the right steps you had to take to become this experience in this field where you now run an entire assessment facility yourself.
That's it. So, one thing I find that people don't do is like to read. So, when you ask that question and I chuckle, I had to do a lot of reading, had to do a lot of research. I needed to know what I wanted to do. Okay, so it wasn't just get up and say, okay, I'm going to start doing ABA or do whatever, which is what a few people do. Okay, but it was, I had been thinking of going on a study leave to do speech, go do speech. Because I thought, well, like every other person, every other parent, because the child wasn't vocal, wasn't speaking, it was all about speech, right? So I had, I forget how many pages. It was a real dossier that I had written, basically a life story, articulating my thoughts and what I wanted to do. And I had gone online looking for universities where they taught speech, so I could do a master's in speech, or even go back to school, undergrad, start. But a lot of the speech um, courses, whether it was in the UK, Europe, US, wherever, were funded for their citizens. So I couldn't get into speech. But whilst doing that, there was this professor emeritus in one of the universities in Canada who, after he read what I had written, pointed me in the direction of ABA and said he didn't think what I needed was speech and that this is it. And so he gave me the link to the board website. So I went on the board website and read everything. And I figured, well, it does sound like something I would love to explore. And this is 11 years ago, as soon as I retired. So there was no gap. So I went on and again did some search and found out that, again, all the universities that offered the program, I started to contact them. And then, of course, I ran into somebody who called me and said they were going to start the registered behavioral technician coursework in Nigeria at the time. And so I signed up for that with a couple of people that are still with me in Shades of Life today. My two oldest staff. I literally dragged them because I was like, I'm not doing this alone. The family members who were interested, I dragged everybody and off we went to, and it wasn't, this is us driving. So I live on the mainland and we would take a drive that was over an hour to go and attend this course physically every Saturday for how many weeks. So we were done, it was supposed to be 40 hours. And so we did that. At the time, there was no exam to become a registered behavior technician, the RBT, at the time. So upon completion, we then the gentleman gave us the link and all of that. So applied to the board and became an RBT. And I thought, well, this looked interesting. So far, so good. And following that, there was the BCABA coursework, which is the what do you call it? The bachelor, equivalent of it, which took 1 year to complete, and 1 year and 1,000 supervised field work. So it's not just to do the theory, you need to do the practical.
Yeah.
And again, this was sacrificing weekends, sacrificing sleep, and all of that. And there were a couple of, I have a colleague who also went through the whole process, also jumped in.
Guys, interesting conversation so far. I'm thoroughly enjoying every bit of it. Doc will be back, as he's probably struggling with network, probably having a couple difficulties here and there, but she'll definitely be joining us again. But so far, it has been engaging. If you have any questions for Doc and anything you'd like her to answer with regards, she's given an in-depth intro about her personality and how she ventured into the space, highlighting the fact that it was inspired because she had a daughter who was on the spectrum. Amongst her very intuitive, ideas to always go on to try new things and stuff. And these things birthed her choice to venture into this space. If you have questions that you're curating, because one, she's an experienced mother with a child who's living with autism, and she's also an experienced specialist when it comes to behavioral therapy. If you have questions, I would really appreciate if you're curating them already. We'll definitely take them as time goes on. We'll definitely take them as time goes on. So please send in your questions as we prepare, as we give it a minute or two before Doc joins us. But so far, it has been a groundbreaking conversation. It is brought to you by AK Foundation for Autism. It is our Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series, where we invite specialists and experienced persons people who have personal journeys, who have siblings and colleagues and friends who are living with some form of disability, neurodivergent challenge, an intellectual or developmental disability, and they come on here and they share extensive experiences with regards managing that, with regards helping the journey so far, how much of a struggle it was to navigate these processes and how they were able to overcome. A lot of them, time and again, tend to share first-hand personal stories, which is one of the most fascinating parts of our conversations, because there is nothing more impactful than experience, right? So when you hear the story from an experienced person, it always resonates more. It always gives you that confidence that it's the achievements of others in this field gives you the confidence that you too can navigate the space, understanding that autism is definitely not the end of the world for a child. So we tend to have these conversations as regularly as we can, to encourage people. As I said, it's probably brought to you by AK Foundation for Autism, an organization that caters to persons, families living within the spectrum. And as part of our digital advocacy campaign, we do these things to ensure that there is more awareness being brought to the conversation, to ensure that people are consistently in the know of what is happening. And speaking of in the know, I wanted to say this. I wanted to say this later on in the space, but it's important I already say it now because Doc already highlighted it when she was describing how she ventured into the space. A lot of people, she said, and I quote, that a lot of people do not like to read, and reading was a very important part of her venturing into the space. IFA is working on something that, via reading can amplify the knowledge of people who are interested in learning more about autism via books. We understand that social media is an important facet of our generation these days, and it's relatively true that a lot of people do not like to read, but there are still a significant number of people who like to read printed materials, who understand the power of books, and for them, we are curating an IFA library. There's a lot of books. We have it at our early intervention center. There are a lot of books coming in. There are a lot of books already on ground. We're opening up the library soon. So anybody looking to gain more to gain more first-hand knowledge on autism, and that reading is your thing, you can spend 2, 3, 4 hours in a day concentrating on the book and dedicating time to learn more about autism, neurodivergent disorders, certain form of disabilities, and all that kind of stuff. You want to do all of that? IFA is opening up a platform for you where we have our library. I'm getting a couple messages from Doc. She's trying to join in. She's struggling with the network a bit. Could just give her a couple more minutes while she joins. But as I said, IFA is opening up the IFA library. It's something everybody should look towards. Something everybody should look towards and look towards being part of. It's definitely, yes, we have Doc again. Welcome back, Doc.
Sorry about that. I've been trying to rejoin and it just kept saying not sent. Anyway.
Yeah, fair. I noticed. But welcome. It's good to have you back. Please.
Network. Sorry, everybody. So where were we? So I was saying that. So I did a lot of the reading, and at the time completed the BCABA, which is a board certified assistant behavior analyst coursework, with 1,000 hours of field work. After the 1,000 hours, my documentation was sent only for them to notice that there was some error on the supervision form or something. I tried to contest it, but suffice to say that I had to go back and do almost another 400 hours of field work. And then as I was concluding that, I was reading up, what does it entail? What do I require? And then I realized that as a BCA BA, I would be supervised for life. And that wasn't going to be a problem in itself if we had enough resources in country. But like I said, it was about problem solving, solutions, contributing my share. And so I figured, okay, why not just go do a master's? And so I went off to do the master's, and at the master's level of ABA, to become a BCBA at the time, we were required to do 1,500 supervised field hours. So you can see that those field hours are very critical. That's where you gain experience. That's where and if you have good supervisors and you're really serious about your field work, you're asking questions, you will do gain valuable experience and insight. So at that stage, I had multiple supervisors because I had gone off to do my master's in the UK. And so um, I was working, under some other people. So Saturdays again, I'll be up at 5 o'clock, off to off to work, and then I was just spreading myself to gain as much knowledge, and it was in the course rounding that off. In between that, I had done the BCABA exam. As soon as I finished with the master's program, I decided, it was nature of my dissertation for my master's. I had done my research was of Nigerian based, so I had to come home, collect data, and all of that. In the course of that, I realized that research isn't bad. There's so many things that we still need. There are people doing stuff in Nigeria. There were people doing work, like somebody like late Dr. Bakari of blessed memory. He was really doing. I had contacted him for some thing, collaboration and all of that. But it was really all over the place, and I thought, I mean, how many people is the same people doing this stuff? And there's just so much to do. Why don't I just jump on into that space? And that's how I got into doing a PhD. I literally wrote my PhD proposal in 24 hours. And in the 24 hours, I had to find a supervisor. I had to find people that would believe in, again, the topic was Nigerian centered. So I had to find people that were going to supervise me. So at least with my master's supervisor sitting on her, we ran around. Anyway, long story short, got into it, and of course got caught with COVID. In between doing starting the PhD, I then sat for the BCABA exam. And these are 4-hour exams. So you better know what your people always think that multiple choice is an easy exam. I don't think multiple choice exams are easy, because you either know it or you don't, versus where you are allowed to ramble on and write your long story, and people can dig through and say, okay, let's give the person some marks. So multiple choice, and some of these things I didn't realize how stressful there were, the exams, because then I would see that there are people that had taken the exam multiple times, and you know, my colleague and I too will just walk into the exam. Again, people you surround yourself with, I think, really matters or contributes to the way you think. So I finished that, continued with the PhD, basically around assessments, diagnosis, making tools and everything culturally relevant for Nigerians, and happy to say that I completed that as well, and in between all of that, of course, we're still doing shades of life work, still mentoring, and still having, to do all sorts of things. But yeah, um, whilst doing that, of course, got approved to start training. So that's how we started providing coursework, training for people. So again, when people don't read, I find it, very. There's a difference between like you've read something, and then you're asking. So maybe like you've read, done some digging around me, and then you're now asking me questions. Oh, how did this happen? Versus you just come out and you're and you're expecting to be spoon fed, you know. And in this field, you can't afford to do that. You must read. You must be keep abreast with the new findings, because ABA is a science that's applicable to anywhere there's an organism, whether it's a human organism or an animal or whatever. You can use the science, and it's not something that's just used in the field of autism. It's just that there's a lot of research that's been done, yes, in the field of autism, as it relates to ABA. One other thing that we've started doing as well is branching off into organizational behavior, so that organizations don't run their HR departments, for instance, and other things the traditional way, and again, taking that awareness in there, because anyway, I guess I'm getting ahead of the question you asked. So let me, that's the thing with teachers, we like to talk.
I mean, it is clear that you have an overwhelming knowledge in this space. So I don't mind giving you the floor to carry on as much as you like. Well, I understand that we are within the schedule, so let's try to keep it at that. Very commendable journey. First, I must say that it's the importance of highlighting the work that has gone into being the person you are. Very important. A lot of people, as you said, stumble or feel like things just don't like to read and don't like to do quality research and think that things just happen. No, it's. I like how you have and particularly highlighted how much of a journey this was. And it still is, because obviously it's never ending, as you said, there's still so much to learn and unlearn with regards to it. Let's go into shades of life for a bit. Before we do that, allow me to say again, if you have questions for Doc, please do well to share them in the comment section. We're taking them at the end of the conversation or as we go on with the conversation. If you have any questions, anything you want to say, please do well to drop a comment, and I'll be putting it forward to Doc before we end this conversation. So let's go into shades of life. Shades of Life for a bit. Shades of Life Care and Shades of Life Foundation. What has the work been like, especially in an environment like Nigeria? How's it been? What has been the challenges experienced? Has it been managing families, schooling families on the processes, the realization of finding out that their children are not less, just a little bit different? How's all that been managed? What has been the highlights, the high points, or the challenges that have been experienced along the way? Just take us through that for a bit.
Yeah, okay. So with Shades of Life Limited, I think the two main issues have been, one, when we started, having people believe that we know what we're doing, but we just figured, like I said to my team, one thing that you need to know is that you just have to be the light. Whether people say, oh, you're doing strict ABA, you're doing collecting data, you stick to it. Stick with what you know is right, what you ought to be doing. You don't cut any corners. And as I believe very strongly spiritually, it says that seest thou a man diligent in his ways and in his work, he will do what? Stand before kings and not before mean men and all that. And so that's what we did. And some of them tell me now, oh, they now see what I mean, because to have stayed on for over 10 years, it's not a walk in the park in Nigeria, and now, thank God again, all by His grace, the referrals, parents that have been with us, people come from outside the country to come. A lot of my team members, because I mean, I've basically empowered them. I'm like, I just need to be eating jollof rice and drinking pepper soup somewhere. You all have earned your laurels, and
Well
if
deserved.
people don't believe that you can do it and they need to see me, then I don't know what else we're going to do, and so that so that's just earning that trust, and for people to realize that you actually know what you're doing, that it's not about the labels or the title, and that's something my other colleague and I believe in strongly. It's not about the labels, it's not about the title. And to the other question of how do we navigate when parents, there are parents that, I mean, we've had all sorts of emotions. There are some that have nearly like pounced on me when they get the label. I've had to move back. I'm like, okay, what were you hoping to hear? You see all the signs, you see what's going on. Were you hoping that we would validate your your position? Okay, whatever that position
Position
is.
was.
Yes. And for me, I believe in saying it as it is so that I can go to bed without any, feeling any guilt or
Guilt.
anything. Yeah. So I'd rather say it, but at the same time, we do it in a compassionate way, because you see people who are, I say to everybody, I'm a parent first before a professional, and that's, for me, that's the difference. I'm a parent professional, and so even my team, they know that whatever I would take with, as a parent,
Parents.
don't serve it out. Okay. And so that's the way we've gone. And so it's just issues around that, and having um, our colleagues in the industry as well believe believe us, collaborate. We've had those that we've been able to collaborate with, and we've had some that have not really taken off, and all sorts of whatever's. But hey, it takes a whole village to get things
You get
going.
things.
Um, navigating the tough ones where we've had issues that we can say, maybe let's think ethical issues or whatever, or cultural mindsets and things that believe that should be the norm and bracket. So we've had those as well, and again, prayerfully gone through them, made the corrections and amends where required and as required, constantly sitting on the team for them to realize that this isn't about the culture, and for also to remember, and I say this to a lot of students when we're teaching, I say, you don't provide intervention based on your culture or what we have designed as a social construct as a people. Those constructs are nice in and of themselves, but that's not where you provide intervention. So we've gone through all of those phases, and it's, we lend a shoulder to the parents that want to cry. There are some days parents come in and they're screaming and all sorts of emotions, and I know that they've probably just had it, or they've just had a burst of, when is this all going to end, because it's a lifelong thing. You're here doing intervention for like a whole year, 2 years, and you're just seeing those progress, and it's not in the leaps and bounds of what you imagined it would be. It's an arduous journey, it's a marathon, it's a lifelong thing. So some days you see parents that are overwhelmed. Even now, some days I still get overwhelmed as a parent, but hey, you pick yourself up, and so we just help them, and we provide sessions where we have people come speak to our parents, so it's not just for them to have a life. And that's where the foundation has played a very significant role, apart from the foundation doing exactly what we do at the limited at no cost. So we're fundraising those people that can't afford it. We just bring them in. What also happens is that we've partnered with some organizations to relieve parents of their children once in a while, maybe like quarterly, so they can go let their head down, just be themselves. So yeah, so it's been very interesting, and having the support of a team in both sides that I can just put in the fore and say, go do this. I mean, that's something that we did. Remember I was saying that we could only do this in the evening because we just came in from Abia State, and that was the foundation going there to do some work as well. So it has it been all lovely. No, would I exchange what I'm doing now for anything else? Well, apart from riding my bicycle, no. So
I love it. I love it. You said quite a lot of things, and the work that Shades of Life does, it's again, I must say, particularly how a lot of conversations about how therapy is can be quite expensive, and reaching out to those families who might be underprivileged, and taking that care to them directly, it's really impressive and commendable. I'll take our next question as a follow up of what you said. You
yeah,
said that you are firstly a parent before a professor. Inspired me to ask, as someone who was with limited experience when you started to notice your daughter was different, then you have grown to be the person who is, doc now and with all that plethora of experience and degrees. What changed with the management of the situation at home with your daughter? With more experience, what were the things that you had to change significantly? I'm sure that there was more awareness with regards to understanding her tantrums and all that. How was that situation managed? What were the things that changed? And how can it be replicated amongst people who find out in today's world that they have children living with autism? How important is the role of family as the first point of intervention for that child?
yes. It's my daughter is 24 now. But even at that, there are things, thank you, there are still things that we're having to teach her. Okay, that you would think, oh, when you look at her siblings, they get it, they just pick this up. But you have to teach. And that's why I say to parents, it's a lifelong thing. Um, Social skill, maybe the deficit in it, shows up in adulthood in a different way. Comprehension shows up, or lack of it shows up in a different way in adulthood. Okay. And so a couple of years ago, maybe like around 2021, 22, I realized that, hey, some of the things that the siblings um, were challenged with understanding
Okay.
were due to possibly not them having enough information or knowledge about what's going on. And so that's when I started the Siblings Perspective series that we ran for a year. I had to pause again because I needed to finish up my my thesis and things like that. So we're going to come back to it and change it a little bit to involve everybody, every family member. But the key thing is giving siblings information. And through that series, what parents, because parents of the children that were coming on as young as 6, 7 at that time, were hearing so much that they were unaware of how it impacted them negatively, not terribly in a negative way, but they just couldn't understand why their brother, sister had all of this going on and they felt like left out. So we then had to make a conscious effort to educate her siblings, okay, and empower them. And we still do. I still do a lot of that. And everybody else in her environment to teach them, educate them on what to do and how to respond to her. And for them to realize that if she knew better, she would do better. And so that's something we also take into our workspace when we're providing intervention. We train the entire family. We prepare them for what lies ahead so that they know that even if you come to Shades of Life for 8 hours, you still have 16 with your child, right? And so everybody that's involved in that child's life has to have training. They have to take ownership of what they may not be collecting data the way we do, but they need to do some level of tracking, which is one of the things that we had to change in our own family. So begin to take more note. What do I do that's a discriminative stimulus, a trigger for this behavior or this response I'm getting from this child? How do I, and you see that it helps. So we do a lot of that during onboarding. And the other thing we do is we say, speak to the neurodiverse child like you would any other person. They may not respond, they may not vocalize, but they are assimilating. Because part of the mistake people make is that they ignore them. And when I mean ignore, they really ignore them. They just plonk them in front of some device or leave them with somebody. So there's no interaction. So if you're not interacting with your child at home, how do they learn the social skills? How do they communicate? How do they learn to, that interaction? It's not by shipping them off to school, because there are some that are not school ready and you expect that they will recruit the social skills in school. No. So everything happens in the home. That is the best learning platform. That's the best place to train up that child. Keep talking. And one day you're going to be surprised that they repeat something to you out of the blues, or they are not deaf and they're not blind. They can see, they pick up, they feel. So let's remember that they're full human beings with complete emotions, and play our roles as parents, empower. And then this thing about not conversing or telling domestic about what's good. They're domestic, they're in the house, they're seeing the child anyway. And they're probably wondering to themselves, what's going on, that this one has come to punish everybody in the house. What kind of, or like our people will ask, which kind of picking be this? If not me, I've heard it. People say, oh, I beg, I no go spend my money for this kind child. I go just put them for one corner. That's some people's mindset. So why don't we empower the domestic? And that's something we do with the foundation. We offer that free training for caregivers, whether it's a driver, nanny, everybody that's in that child. Yes, so that they understand. Give them hands-on, so they understand what to do. You're leaving them, your child, in their care anyway, whilst you're off to work. Even if you're a stay at home, there's a gap, even at 1 second or 5 minutes that you leave your child with it. They need to know what to do if something, the child decides to go have a tantrum or something. So it's really important that every single person in that individual space, as a child, adolescent, or an adult, is educated and empowered to know what to do. So those are the things that we change, and what we now tell our parents and help them do.
Well said, madam. Well said, madam. It's this, especially in Nigeria. You've highlighted how there's some certain level of stigma around it, and Shades of Life combating that. Brilliant work. Let's be still in the Nigerian context. As someone who acquired a PhD in intellectual and developmental deficiency, a disability in the University of Kent, let's I want to do some sort of comparison, not a comparison, but let's highlight ways we can, things you saw there and things that can be implemented here in Nigeria and the Nigerian society that can help improve the learning processes of people who are willing to, get more knowledge in this space. right? What are the things that can be implemented in Nigerian society by the government, by private establishments that could help, amplify those seeking knowledge about managing these situations?
So one would be that we would need to do a lot more research. Okay, there are studies being done, but the specific studies where we're not even yet looking at prevalence. We need to do the foundation work. Okay, do we have tools that are culturally sensitive? I know that there's the NASC, the Nigerian Autism Screening Questionnaire that was developed, but I think we still need to work on it some more to have something like a convergent validity done. Okay, to be sure, compared. So things like, but these are the steps that we take. We have to have people who truly want to acquire knowledge. We need to embed a lot of these programs into a university setting. We need to, and trying to do it with federal universities can be, an uphill task, because again, it has to go through different levels. So yes, even if it's a state government, but I think with the state level, or it may be a little easier, if you have. The other thing could be to get it into private universities, but again, people have to understand, because the thing about it is that if they come to you and say, "Oh, which I see literally every day," you're like, "Oh, what is autism? This is it." Because people aren't seeing it, it's not tangible. It's not like a Down syndrome that you see. It's not like any other physical disability that you readily can touch, feel, see, and that thing. So it's an abstract concept, more or less. So if people don't really understand it, how do they give you that space? And so that's one thing that needs to happen. They have to listen to us, myself, my colleagues in the space, explain to them what's going on, so that we can begin to empower more people to be professionals from the get-go. People that are interested. You don't need to complete. Right now, it's okay, you complete your bachelor's, then you come and do one of our trainings or any of the other ones available. But embedding this in programs in the university could help. Okay. The other thing is that I can't overemphasize it. Our people need to read. Over there, people are reading. People are willing to research. People are willing to put in the work. People, if you say you need supervision, they get supervision. I'm not saying that it's 100% out there, because they still have people with bad behavior, bad practices. Even in America, as at last year, there were still people using electric shock, okay, for them. So there's no perfect society, but we can take, like you asked, is what are those things that we need to do that would be beneficial to us? If you're asked to, if you're a behavior technician, for instance, know that you need to be supervised, and be supervised. You can't go to the UK or any other environment, the US or wherever, Canada, and you're wondering about, as a behavior technician or whatever, and just being an atom, moving about randomly. You can't do that, So we need to do that, and we've put some. I have some colleagues and people that we've put some things together, and we're going to start pushing it out. We've actually started, but we need to begin to push. I'm on the board of one of such entity with other colleagues, and we need to push this out so that all these atomic behaviors will begin to cease. I mean, because these are the sort of things that they're doing elsewhere. So yeah.
Brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. I'll also highlight that my organization, AK Foundation for Autism, we understand the importance of the need for acquiring knowledge via reading. Here in Abuja, we're putting together an autism and neurodivergent library where we have a plethora of books where people can come in, people willing to acquire this necessary knowledge, come in and just, read extensively and fully grasp and understand how these situations can be managed. And that's something we're working on. We're rolling out a bit. The books are available with setting things up. Max in a month, we are up and running. I want to pick your brain on something that we had discussed earlier. Now, as someone who has a daughter who's on the spectrum, and you discovered early, right? Research shows that the best time a child can actively be diagnosed around 2 to 3 years. How important is early diagnosis for a family, right? How important is it for a family to see this early?
It is the best thing you can do for that child. Okay. As you know, with what I know, I said to people with what I know now, I could have probably said that my daughter was on the spectrum from birth because there are certain things she did that I find, I found them very, it was very interesting. Let me just say interesting. When I compared her with the older one, and what's going on here, you know? So with what I know now, I probably, could have known about it much earlier.
Yeah.
Definitely by the age of 1. And at 12 months, really, any mother or any parent, whether it's a mom, dad, who's observant and true to themselves, would have observed some delay, some developmental differences, especially if they have neurotypical children or they are around other children.
Yeah.
Okay. By the time that child is 2, it's usually full blown. Whatever it is that you're seeing is usually full blown. And so at that time, you just, everybody isn't me. I know that some of my people say I'm a military, I'm this, I'm that. But I mean, there's no point sitting and faffing around when there's something to be done. You've seen this, yes. Do you like it? No. But don't be selfish. It's about that individual, not about us as parents. Do you understand? Our mind should be, how do we help? And the earlier we start, like that 2, 3 years, the brain is still growing. It's still malleable. You can bombard it. You can do a lot of things at that time. That's not to say that if you wait till 5 or that things can't be done, but then it's going to take a lot more effort. And unfortunately, or well, maybe for, I don't know, we are in an environment where everything is about academics. You have to go to that Ivy League school. You have to do the, so they lose focus of what is important for that child who is not even potty trained at age 5 or 6, and you're wearing pull-ups, 2 pull-ups, 1 shot, everything, and you're sending them off to school. And they're not even vocalizing. So how do they function in that environment? Whereas you can save yourself all of that and, get them the help they need very early. Okay. So it's really important that diagnosis or the gaps, whatever it is, some people don't want a label, fine. But like I say to them, for those of us that are Christians or read their Bible, there was a certain man who Jesus got to. What did he ask? He said, "What's your name?" I don't believe that he didn't know the guy's name or whatever it is. But he's paused. This is the same person that had gone on previously to say, "Spirit of blindness, come out, this one, lose your hold," and all. It gets to this particular one and goes, "What's your name?" There's a lesson in there. And the guy speaks up, and it wasn't about having that label stuck on the guy. It was so that he got the help that he required in that moment. So why are we shying away from getting a diagnosis for those people who don't want to have a name or a label? If you go to the hospital and you're complaining about the doctor, oh, the left side of my eye is throbbing and whatever, and they send you to the lab and you come out and they say, oh, there's still some people that will do, oh, it's not my portion, God forbid. Yeah, but you did hear a label, right?
Label.
Before you started the God forbidding and sending the portion to somebody else. So why don't you know what it is that you want to be rejecting, rather than not know what it is and you're just there? Because the thing about having a proper diagnosis is that it actually helps tease apart because there are a lot of things that, because autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, okay, an intellectual disability, there are so many other things that mimic. The symptoms are all the same. So you want to really know what you're dealing with. In the course of my research, there was this particular child that I met, administered everything, but it just didn't. The thing ASD was not sticking where she was concerned. So I kept digging and digging, and I said I needed to see or speak to the child's mom to get hungry. We finally got hold of that. It was Eureka. It wasn't autism that was going on with this child. It was leaning more towards a childhood disintegrative disorder, but all the symptoms were there that we could have said this is autism. Okay? So that's why it's really important to tease out and differentiate what's going on. And that's why it's called differential diagnosis. It's not a label that for the fun of labeling that individual. So yes, it's really crucial for us to have early diagnosis so that intervention can start nice and early.
Doug, beautifully well said. It's important. It's important. It's also very important that you highlighted how the earlier the better. Doesn't mean that later it cannot be managed properly. But the importance of early diagnosis is just it cannot be overemphasized, and that's something we also try to say to parents. Be encouraged with bringing your children for diagnosis. Let's review, let's assess this child, let's see why this or that happens. Let's not just leave it to chance and hope and pray. I know that prayer is important, but let's not just hope and pray and wish it, as you said, to someone else. I want to put a little bit of your experience to the foreplay there, right? While we round up, I know that I round up. I know that we've been here for about an hour. Thank you. I will just exhaust this towards the last bit. Let's highlight the processes in which the process, right? When you know the behavioral patterns that you see to tell that this child is different in some way, the practices that can be put in place with it, worked on towards that child, then the successes, the milestones, the behavioral improvements that you would see to say that yes, there have been improvements in this particular child.
Okay. So I mean there are different flags. Say the person notices the child in. I mean a lot of people verbal means many different things, okay? So it's more about vocalizing. You use your vocal cords. Um, the person isn't maintaining eye contact. Maybe they're not responding to their name. Whatever it is that they observe, the family observes, right? However, when that particular behavior or response needs to be worked on, they will need to collect, at least for us, what we call baseline data. Okay, so where are you at basically when we get you? So maybe you're not even sitting down, or you're probably sitting down for 2 seconds at the most. There's no classroom that, at least as a child or even a toddler, that lasts 2 seconds. The minimum is about 20 minutes, right? And then they get up. or even if they're doing circle time. So you see that you have a benchmark where you need that individual to be at, and you're at 2 seconds. So again, with behavior analysis, you make evidence-based, data-driven decisions. So you're going to need to collect a lot of data, and that's what differentiates ABA from every other. That's why it's science. So you're making scientific conclusions. You just don't tell somebody. I say, "Oh, Epic, yes." So you can now, yeah, Epic can now sit down for 5 seconds. How? Show me. And of course, we get into try and sit for the 5 seconds and that's what we get. A lot of that, the pseudo ABA or people just fabricating data and passing it on to parents because they now hear that in ABA you have to collect data. So they collect anything and give to the parent. And then you can't, you look at the data and you can't marry both.
Get married.
So you must make informed decisions based on data. That's how you track that progress, at least for us. That's how we track the progress. And we know that child A is improved from where they came to where they currently are. And the parents have access to all of that. And they must be involved. They may, like I keep saying, they may not collect their own data the exact same way we do as professionals, but they will collect something. Okay, so that's the simple way to measure progress.
Progress.
Yeah.
Very important, highlighted the importance of data. There's so many interactions you have with, in quotes, so-called therapists, and there's not a lot of concrete data to back up the processes in which they say they have executed some of the progresses that they claim to have achieved. And it's very important that you highlighted that, Marlon. It has been a very, very enlightening conversation. We could go on and on and on, but we round up because we understand that you are a very busy person. Even your team, as you said earlier in Advocacy today, as I like to commend the work that you guys are doing. I did a little bit of research and very commendable efforts your team is putting in. We would not leave without highlighting the role the government has to play in the lives of people living with autism in Nigeria. It's a very
Yeah.
important. It's an important conversation. Some days ago, we were with the Ministry of Youth Development, and we were invited over for an engagement some days ago where these conversations we had with regard mental health from an experience point of view. What would you say the government has to do to ensure that people who are already living with autism, both as children and as adults, live sustainable livelihoods, live livelihoods that are worthy, that are void of these limitations that they currently experience?
So, like I always say that government is us. That's what I started with. Abi, government of the people, by the people, for the
People,
people.
yeah.
So if some governor sitting somewhere has no clue about what's going on, so they're not wearing the shoes, nobody in their family is wearing the shoes, nobody, is that person going to be thinking about autism or policy? Not likely.
Not
So
like
what do? We find, that's where public-private partnership comes in. So they need to look for people. They need to listen to their constituency. They need to listen to those people who are walking in those shoes and engage them. So how do we, and so that's what I say, like Abia State, for instance, that we just came from. It's because somebody there knows about autism, has seen it, okay, and so
okay.
was able to work with us and say, okay, come and educate my people across different sectors, different parastatals, and then you're looking for who is now going to take ownership of it. So these are some of the things, and putting policies in place. And it's not just, yeah, putting policy in place is a good step, but then following through with the
Very
policy.
important.
Okay. And that's again where they need professionals. So it's, they don't necessarily have to create some ministry of autism or ministry of whatever. They have existing parastatals that they can embed these things in. Do you understand?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then have the right people. And sometimes the right people are not those ones making plenty noise. Oh. Do you
Very true.
understand?
Yes, ma'am. Very
I
true.
mean, there are a lot of people quietly doing things around. They don't make noise. So again, look for the right people. If the person is really interested in, or the government is interested, whether at the federal level, state level, doing something tangible for this population. We also need to have organizations, companies that are ready to partner. So we can't leave everything to the government. Yes, the government is putting policies and all of that in place, but we, the private sector, also need to create enabling environments, especially for adults. Which is why, like once I experience something, we move to the next step. I mean, my daughter had a stint working, and there were certain things again from that, and some other young people in employment that I've interacted with, that's led to looking at, using the organizational behavior, ABA, in organizational settings, and trying to educate the environment on how to incorporate or how to manage and how to work with individuals, adults, young adults, and undiagnosed adults. Because whether we like it or not, we have people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that have not been diagnosed but are there in environments, So educating, organizations reaching out to say, okay, come talk to us. Let's look at this. How can we do things better? Those are some of the things that actually need to be done.
Well said. Well said. Beautifully said, madam. We've spent quite some time here, and I want to let you go. Spend quite some couple minutes here, but I want you to wrap up with final words and just highlight the experience. If you could personalize your final words, highlighting the experiences with your daughter, those key points where because when we say people live in the spectrum and manage the families, people like to think that the journey is filled with a lot of sadness all through its entirety. And
Nah.
personally, I know that it's not. So wrapping up with your final words, let's highlight those significant moments that had you smiling, that had you cherishing the fact that you get to do this, experience this firsthand with your daughter now.
A lot of my friends and people that know, after a while, I just stopped talking about her, especially in the context of professionalism, because people just now go with this. So I tap into your this, I tap into your that. I'm like, oh gosh, stop tapping. Just go and do the work that needs to be done. But anyway, so I'd always been around siblings. Everybody had always been around her. The time and this is somebody that went from non-vocal, not talking, had a lot of problem issues. Like I said at the beginning, food was an issue. Sleep is still a little bit of a problem, but she's managing that by herself now. Has a routine. But when she went off to university, it was and it was something as simple. I mean, I wrote about it then ages ago. She had to cross. Yeah. So
Yes,
I
we
was
just wrap up
saying
with
that
that last
the
conversation.
day she had to cross when we sent her off to uni, and she had to cross the street, at the traffic light. So what I did was step back and let her take the lead and just to observe and see what will happen. She did it. She went, because before she wouldn't look left, right, and all of that, just see the walking man, and it was just a moment that after a while she turned, looked at me like, Mom, why aren't you coming? I'm like, no, I'm right behind you, keep going. And I was just extremely emotional that I mean, this young lady did this, and we're going to leave her in this environment, in the wild west, as they say, all by herself. Oh goodness. And I had taken her around uni, made sure she could find her way. This is what you do here, this is what happens here, that sort of thing. And to see her go through 4 years of being in uni, incident free, was just, it was just something lovely to behold. And and that's, for me, it's not even the whole unit, that's just crossing that street unaccompanied by herself. I was in a very happy place. It was extremely emotional for me. All my friends heard about it, and by the time I broke down, I was moaning and crying and everything. Those that understood. They were like, "My dear, you've really tried. Don't worry, she'll be fine," and all of that, and things like that. But is every day rosy? No. She's had some days where, I mean, she's like, quantification, for instance. Recently, her sister had to take her round to show her how you scout. You can't stay in one shop and spend all your money. There's something called looking around and compare. I mean, you would think that at 24 it would click, right? No, but that's part of them that is just rigid, repetitive. You're not making those everyday decisions that we all take for granted. And so that's why every day there's something to teach. There's something to teach. But yeah, but by and large, it's been an interesting journey. Would I change it? No, because there are some things that you wake up and say, yeah, I wish I didn't do that. But it's not one of those things that I would say I wish didn't happen, or there's absolutely no regret. It's simply just made me a better person, or I've acquired a lot of skills from just having to walk this path. And I encourage other people to just look for the silver lining in the situation. You will find it. If you can get past the woe is me, like I said, not everybody, and some of my staff, they tell me that they go, Dr. M, not everybody is like you. I'm like, yes, I agree, but jump into the thing and move. Don't wait. Just keep moving. Don't think about. Don't let any grass grow under your feet. Trample on everything and just keep moving. Just keep, put your blinders on and just keep going. That's what I can. I say to parents, even some of our own parents. And then my favorite analogy again. I've come up with a lot of analogies and sayings in this in the course of all of this. I say to everybody, put a basket, not a drum, basket of patience on your head, and then use a straw to sip it. Because about how are you going to hold some if it's not solid in a basket? Okay, water or sand is more likely to leak out, but just have it up there. Have a straw from it to your mouth and just keep sipping it. When you run out of it, have a sip and keep going. That would be it for me.
Well said. Beautifully said. A fantastic analogy to wrap it up. It has been an immensely unexpected and immensely impactful conversation. I have enjoyed every bit of it thoroughly. Doc, thank you Thank you, and thank you again for your time. Thank you for joining the conversation, the Lend Your Voice 1000 Voices for Autism series. We genuinely appreciate you. All of us at EK Foundation for Autism are saying a big thank you. We'll be looking forward to partnering with Fly in the near future, because we our paths are kind of inclined. I mean, that's what we're here, so we could. I'm looking forward to fostering this partnership to see that it fulfills the purpose of this birth.